Well, I think it's very valid to say that there are a lot of downside risks to the euro in the next maybe 3 to 6 months' time. But in the short term, I think we could potentially be even seeing a bit of a short squeeze, given that there's a lot of negatives that's already in the price. For instance, whatever is happening in France, potentially next week in Germany, ECB cutting rates. So I think the risk is what is the next catalyst that can push the euro beyond parity or even beyond. So I think the two big risks that I could see is potentially the blanket tariffs that could potentially come through, and the other would be ECB front-loading rate cuts. So I think on that note, if we do have those things happening, I think a big move towards parity and beyond, it could be possible. But bearing that, which is not our house view assumption, we think that potentially somewhere closer towards figure 2 could be somewhere to keep a lookout for. Yeah.
What would stop it from breaking parity, you think? Why the resistance? You're saying you're saying coming close to one, but not breaking past it.
So the part about tariffs, the blanket tariffs coming from Trump, I think it's still quite a big question mark whether he meant it as a bargaining chip, or to unlock bigger policy agenda and stuff like that. I think that part is still quite a bit of an unknown to some extent. So if we do have that coming true, I think the risk is very real. But at this point, I think I don't want to jump to conclusion. We see it as a chance of it happening, but not quite. We can't quite understand or can't quite put a understanding on what is going through in terms of Trump, his policies, his agenda, that sort of things. Yeah.
I think your point, Rob, was more about the political turmoil in France and Germany, right? That could also lead to a flight to safety into U.S. assets, if I'm putting that across correctly. Do you think that could put pressure on the euro dollar?
Yeah. Again, I think on that note, we've seen quite a bit of that known risk to some extent. So I think these are very valid, and is something that markets kind of know to some extent. So I think I'm just gonna take it with a little pinch of salt. We have seen quite a bit of a European political risk over the last couple of years, and most of the time we saw that and it come to pass. And I'm just gonna borrow that playbook to some extent to look at euro to some on that political side of things.
I think the other distinction is just the economies, not just the politics. So the US economy is in rude health, and our view is, as we discussed earlier, only 2 more rate cuts by the Fed, maybe possibly even less. And for the ECB, we have 6 more rate cuts, so a lot more going forward. So if that kind of plays out, I think that will also, favour the dollar strengthening against the euro.
Absolutely. Our house view looking for rate cuts, including the one coming up in December, is about 5 cuts. So we are looking at slightly a bit more Fed cuts. So that justifies, where we think that could form a little bit of a support for the euro to some extent. Yeah.